everybody! It's me, Melanie, coming to you from the Outer Banks, North Carolina. Got me some handy, I've got my recording equipment here. Timmy'd be so proud. And so before we get any further into this, I need to wish my buddy Tim a happy birthday because I don't think I officially told him. Here we go. Audio in. Hopefully that's good. Hopefully it's working. Hopefully you can hear me. If not, this is kind of all for naught. I'm putting the headphones in because we've got some distraction noise from the construction outside, as always. So I want to wish Tim a happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Tim. Happy birthday to you. And we're just finishing a little bit of setup. Sorry, I'm going to crank this around so it's semi-straight. No, maybe. The painting's straight on the wall. I can't pull myself together to make the camera straight, but that's okay. We're going to switch the angle around anyways. So there's my fruit. We are a fruit-eating, juicing family. Oh, and I've got to sign in on this side. So let's see if I pop up in the... Nope. Definitely don't. That's so disappointing. It's not that disappointing. All right, naked lady mandalas. Why am I the naked lady mandalas? Well, I'm the naked lady mandalas because I bear my naked soul and I share my journey. And today we are going to be talking about the journey I have had with my husband since 2008. This is 15 years now, right? And gonna click into this live, sign in. We're gonna give it a like button. We're gonna mute it. We're gonna say, hey everyone, thank you for being here. And that way, it kind of gets its visibility going a little bit. There we have it. So now, my husband and I started taking a journey with each other all those years ago. We started our journey actually in 2005 or 2006, where I met him, and I'll get into all of that. Ooh, those are a little rough today. I guess this will give you guys the opportunity to hear the changes of the tone and why playing in tune is so important. Because playing on those strings would be bleeding of the ears. Oh, so much nicer, right? All right. So this song that we're going to start off our journey today with is a song I wrote for my husband, and it is called Sensitivity. Let me see if I can figure out how to play it. Takes a minute sometimes. You activate me through all the sensitivity. With all the emotions and the possibilities. Constant reflection of all those good intentions, always calling you out, helping to make those connections. I'm just gonna move the mic. the guitar a little better. I never felt like this before. It's all complete now. No longer wanting more. Because of you, I'm here. Because of me, you can release all the fear. And we got this now together. Best friends forever. Multi-dimensional, we've gone through the changes and the rearranges. All the timelines, redirecting our fine lines, finding a way through all the shadows, playing the power of this connection. I never felt this way before. It's all complete now, no longer wanting more. Because of you, I'm here. Because of me, you can release all the fear. And we've got this now together. Best friends forever. Bound so tightly to the wounds of the past. So much has changed, it's happened so fast. Gotta move forward, cause we know it won't last. Through loss and sickness and death may we part. This one's forever, cause you have my heart. Never felt this way before. It's all complete now, no longer wanting more. Because of you, I'm here. Because of me, you can release all the fear. And we've got this now together. Best friends forever. We got this now together. Best friends forever. So there you have it. There is sensitivity. If you just came into the chat, thank you for being here. I'm going to put my guitar down right quick. Thank you for being here on this lovely, sunny, amazing day. I hope it's nice and sunny where you are. If it's not, and it's rainy, and it's cold, and it's ugly, get inside. Give yourself a little comfort. Make yourself a nice hot cup of cacao or tea or coffee, and just chill out, relax as we take this mandala journey together. It's good. That's my second cup today, but we didn't have coconut oil today, or coconut milk until Chris came back from the store. And Handy, he's home. He gets to go get the girls in 30 minutes. So we get to hang out for as long as we want. And we will see how it all turns out. So today's video, we're going to possibly be finishing this bad boy. Oops, sorry to move the microphone. We're going to be possibly finishing this bad boy. Today, there's a lot to do in these spaces here. So we'll see if it happens. And the design will be completed, and then I will go back over it, because if I bring it a little bit closer, you can see some of the little fading on the lines, and there might be some little nicks and stuff I got to clean up was the paint. But I don't have to do that while I'm on screen with you guys. I can do that in the background, but it's nice to, I think the microphone's pointing away. I've learned some things about this whole journey. No, there it is. All right. Trying to learn. There we go. So yeah, we are going to take this painting journey. I've got some poetry and some words of wisdom from a really amazing book that I just finished reading that I'd love to share with you all in a little while. Got my handy paintbrush, my handy vegan paintbrush set that Chris got me. These handy hairpins that put your hair up, and that's all it is, and it's copper, and it's super cool. So yeah, we're gonna fill a paint dish. So today's journey, it was a request last video to tell the story of how one goose met a gander and things happened. So Chris and I met back in 2006, and remind everybody, I am vegan now, but we met goose hunting. We met goose hunting while I was dating my ex-boyfriend, and my ex-boyfriend and I had just been dating for 6 months. Matt Sacco, if you watch this, so much love for you, dude, because you put up with some crazy ass shit back in those days, and you're a strong person to have been able to survive that. But we are very friendly still with Matt and his lovely wife, Emil. We got to go to their wedding, which was awesome, in a beautiful old rustic barn. And yeah, so we met goose hunting while I was dating Matt, and Matt introduced him as his friend Chris, and Chris was this really good shot, and he could like shoot anything, and he was this amazing hunter, and he told me the stories before we got there of like how phenomenal this dude was. And then I met him, I was like, oh, he's nice, he's pretty handsome. That was something that went through my mind. But all right, I don't know how I got this in like the expanded mode, but somehow that happened. Ooh, there we go. No, I'm not going to rotate the device. My life is chaos, but that's okay. All right, let's see what we got here. There's bunny stuff from one end of my life to the other. But we're making it work, right? So, starting off with mandalas. Life is a mandala, if y'all weren't aware, and I didn't tell you that 30,000 times already. Life is a mandala. And it's all about the layers. Flowers are mandalas, trees are mandalas. We are a walking mandala, ourselves are a mandala. The mandala goes all the way to ourselves and out to the stars. We are on a giant mandala of earth. We are all part of the mandala. We are all little dots and dashes and lines walking upon the earth. We are a moving mandala. And so in the process of creating mandala, some people start from the outside, work their way in. Some people start from the inside, work their way out. I am the latter of the folks that start from their outside, or start from the inside and work their way out, and that's the majority of people. It doesn't matter how you start. It doesn't matter how you do this and take this journey. It just matters that you're trying, and that you're present, and that you are loving what you're doing, even if it doesn't look the way that you want it to. And these lessons that we learn through these mandalas teach us about life. So I met Christopher on a cold, wintry fall day in upstate New York. Just had a cool idea, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to do these little lines here. A cold, wintry day in upstate New York, and I met him, shook his hand, was like, hey, it's nice to meet you. And he's like, nice to meet you too. And I was like, he's kind of handsome, but he's got a girlfriend. Her name's Tasha. I've got a boyfriend. His name's Matt. Life's good. And over those years, Chris And Matt and myself and Matt's little brother and Matt's younger friend Colin, we would all ram around, go shoot woodchucks and go goose hunting or turkey hunting or drinking at the Crooked Board. If anybody watches this video from upstate New York, we definitely went drinking at the Crooked Board, which was this tiny little hole in the wall bar. They don't have bars like that anymore that are cool. In Slaterville, New York. And you could go there, get all you could eat chicken wings, all you could drink beer for the low price of $11, guys, per person. These look like peanuts. I just put peanuts on my mandala. So yeah, we would go to the Crooked Board. He'd get me hammered drunk, playing pool and hanging out at the bar with Matt and Colin, and then send me home with Matt, and he'd have to hold my hair back as I puked from drinking way too much alcohol. But those were my young college years, living the dream, right? Took Chris to work a couple of times because his car had broken down, and our paths kind of like crossed here and there throughout the time period. And then the summer of 2007, I was working at the hospital as a nurse's aide, and Matt had decided to go travel to Alaska for the summer and work on a salmon fish farm and take this adventure. And so I was taking an adventure with Lucky. We had started showing, we were doing eventing. I'd gone to my first event the weekend before. I was gearing up for the next event and left work one morning on a beautiful sunny day. It was supposed to be 96 degrees. And I was like, I should probably go ride Lucky now, since we've got this event coming up, get it done and out of the way so that he doesn't have to do it at 5 o'clock in the evening when it's really flipping hot outside. So I didn't have my boots. I didn't have my riding pants. I had nursing scrubs and flip-flops. And because I had been at work, I accidentally had left my cell phone. I've got to not get stuck in the cords here. I left my cell phone accidentally in my pocket. One of those Razor flip phones. I thought I was real cool. It had like 1.8 megapixel camera. Left it in my nursing scrub pant or the tops pockets. And when you're up there riding, there's no cell service, and I didn't want to lose my phone because there was no insurance crap back then like there is now, I guess. And so I would always leave my phone at home. And accidentally left it in my pocket. Took off riding in the arena and did a great warm-up training session. He did awesome, rode him around, and was like, oh, good boy, buddy, let's go up for a run on the top field, and then I'm going to go home and get some rest, and you have a good day. And so we rode up this logging road about a mile to get to the very top, and it like a switchback road going up and up and up this mini mountain. I mean, it was a big hill, big and steep, but a mini mountain, not even close to mountain size. Some of the highest elevation in that area. And went up to the top field. This dog that I rode with every day came and spooked Lucky while I was riding, doing the same thing I do every day. And I flew off and I broke my back. And so I end up in this back brace and crazy journey that happened from all of that. Matt's in Alaska and not coming home, and I don't really like my family, so I'm staying at his house, hanging out with his parents because I was weird like that. And thank you guys, Lucia and Mark, for all that you all put up with. We're going to put some like stripy things in here, like wisps of grass, I kind of like to call them. And so I was staying there, and Chris showed up to show Nick, who I also hung out with, was Matt's little brother. They were only 2 years apart in age, and so I had a lot in common with Nick. And Chris shows up to show Nick what he just shot, which there should be statute of limitations and there's no proof, but it was a turkey vulture, and I don't know how or why or like how that all happened, but I remember him coming and I to the door and I was like, I feel like I'm with the wrong person. And that thought hit me, and then I went on about my business. And so that fall, I signed a lease on my first apartment ever, a little 1-bedroom apartment. Matt came back from Alaska. We fought and bickered and had like so many issues from the moment he got back. It was just a mess. And he'd found himself. He'd realized, that what was going on with me was more than he could handle. And so over the next 2 months, things definitely crashed and burned. And in October, he showed up one night and just broke it off. And I was so mad. I was so heartbroken. I was devastated. I thought this was the guy I was going to marry. Like it was bad. And I kind of isolated and secluded myself and hung out and watched movies and hung out with my dog Kobe, my little yellow lab at the time, and kept myself busy. And then my friend Charles at school invited me out to have drinks one night. And we were just friends. And went to a bar that was downtown Ithaca. I can't tell you the name of it now. And lo and behold, Chris Brewer was there in all of his shining glory. And he saw me and he picked me up and he gave me this huge hug and spun me around. He was like, I haven't seen you in forever. Oh my gosh, where have you been? And I said, well, Matt and I broke up. And he was like, what? And it's like, yeah, we broke up like 2 months ago. And he was just blown away. And so I had met up with Charles, but then saw Chris going to get drinks at the bar. And so we're also going to add a buddy line because every line needs a buddy. Every person needs a buddy. It's all about community, right? So I start talking, and we're only going to go up halfway. We're going to like mix it up here. We're going to go to that one there. So I see Chris at the bar. He picks me up. He's so excited. We start talking, and we talked all night. The whole night we talked. We went outside. We smoked cigarettes. We kept talking. And it was great. It was near Christmas. And then I left, and I was like, well, that was weird. We had like so much in common. Like, that was really a fun conversation. And so we started texting a little bit, and he called me and asked if I wanted to meet him out for sushi and drinks the next night. And I said yes. And so we went out for sushi and drinks. And then he had a girlfriend that he was on the outs with. He'd been sleeping on the couch for a while. And, or he'd even moved in with some other friend. Like, it was already ending. And we hung out every day in a row. Then he asks if he can take me out on Christmas Eve. And I said, sure, why not? So we go out on Christmas Eve. He kept me out till 4 o'clock in the morning. We went to my sister's friend from way back when, who I ended up becoming friends with as well. And then lo and behold, Chris knows him. And so we were playing that game Power Hour till 4 a.m. I was all sorts of hungover Christmas Day. My parents were furious. Rightfully so, even though I was 22 at the time, or 21 at the time. Let's see what we're going to do here. Trying to, I'm going to do these weird little bubble things, because why not? We're just living our best life here, and that's what I'm being called to do, so we're going to do it. So then he called me on like Christmas Day, and he's like, I just want to wish you a Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a really beautiful holiday, and I hope everything's going well with your family. And I was like, this is so weird. And then the next week, like, he comes to work. I work at a bus station, and he's bringing me flowers and asking if he can take me out to lunch. And then, he's still bringing me flowers, and I'm like, why is he so nice? Why is he so caring? Riding around in the car with him, he talks to his mom and his sister like he likes them. And I'm like, why does he tell them that he loves them and hangs up, like when he hangs up the phone with them, like who does that? Who loves their family that much? And So then I was telling my friends, I was like, he's just so nice. There's got to be a catch. Like, there's something weird. They're like, Mel, just relax. It's fine. Just relax. I was like, no, he's like really nice. And then I was invited to sing opera at a friend's New Year's Eve party. And so he ended up being my New Year's Eve date. And it's like a black tie affair at these people's house. I sang opera and spent New Year's Eve with him. He told me that day that he gave up smoking because of my asthma. I smoke the reefer regularly now, but it was tobacco smoking. And he wanted to give that up so that I didn't have to worry about my breathing. And I was like, gosh, this guy is like really great. And so he moved in with me New Year's Eve, and we have been together ever since. I'd only been in my own apartment for, I think, 3 months by myself, and then had someone else moving in with me. And that, I said we've been together ever since, and that's actually not true because we separated in 2019. But there's a lot to tell before we get there. I'm going to come back here, and we are going to color this one in so that it's a thicker band. So we get together, move in together. A year later, we're in South Carolina. He proposes. We get married September 4th, 2010. Probably shouldn't give the full dates, but whatever. Doesn't matter. You want to come find me, come find me. We get married, have this amazing wedding. I bought him a puppy for Easter that year, a goose hunting dog. His name was Huckleberry, and if you followed my journey, you will have met Huckleberry. Coolest dog ever. He traveled and did so many things and just lived his best puppy life. We even like arranged babysitters for him and stuff when he was a baby, and all our friends would take turns taking him places. And Matt, my ex at the time, he wasn't with his wife then, and so he was dating people, and he's like, it's great taking him to Cornell because all the hot college chicks want to pet him and they'll talk to you and everything. So Huckleberry was in our wedding. My dog Kobe was in our wedding. We got married at Letchworth State Park, which is the Grand Canyon of the East in upstate New York, closer to Buffalo. Really beautiful state park, wonderful waterfall. Just a really beautiful ceremony. And then we got pregnant with our first daughter in February of 2011. And I held my shit together pretty well there were times when I was really angry and really, working through the childhood trauma boundary stuff and the wounding that comes up and the triggers and all of that stuff. Like it wasn't ever easy, especially with who I was as a human. But he stuck by me. And so then we had our first daughter, and it was great for about 2 months. And then in January of 2012, I really started to go downhill. I suffered from severe postpartum depression and anxiety. I would wake up having horrific nightmares. A lot of it also came from the anxiety that my mother experienced, and then would tell me about her anxiety and like trigger me into more anxiety. I started losing my friends because I was just freaking out, and I lost my best friend of 10 or 12 years that year because I lost my mind. And he stuck by me. We then decided, my mother said, I gotta go back over this line here, but you've got to have a sister for Lily. You can't just make her an only child, because I just wanted to have Lily. I didn't want to have more children. And she said she has to have a sister or brother. She has to have somebody that she can rely on in the event that something happens to you guys. She can't be left alone. And so I said, well, if we're going to do this, I'm not spacing this out. And like, I just want to get it done. And so we're going to have 2 kids and back to back, and then be all done with the babies and diapers and all that. So we got pregnant with Lulu when Lily was 6 months old. And I started to have pretty intense back issues after breaking my back. When I broke my back, they found out I had a degenerative disc and arthritis in the L5S1 joint with no fluid left in the disc. And that was from an injury when I was 14 that I went to the hospital for, and nobody believed me. And they didn't have MRI machine where we lived at that time. All they had was x-ray, and they said that I was probably fine. And I suffered with severe back pain from like a ruptured disc for years. And people just said, it's fine. We can't find anything wrong, sent me to physical therapy, all that stuff. And then got the MRI 6 years later. And come to find out, and you're like, oh, that's why. And so that kind of made much more sense. But having children, your hips shift, the weight in your pelvis shifts, everything is changing, growing, moving, and you're carrying around an extra 30 pounds of weight. And that became very uncomfortable in my back, and I started needing to take Vicodin. And needing to take Vicodin just to make my mood feel better because I was already dealing with depression and issues. And had I eaten differently, had I lived the lifestyle that I live now, I don't think that I would have experienced any of that. I have a grief that I still work through, wishing that I'd had those childhood years with my kids where I felt the way that I feel now, mentally, physically, emotionally. But we can't go back and change it. And so as I was pregnant with Lulu, I began to abuse opioids. And I would get them from my doctor, and then I would steal them from my dad. And like I said, I bear my naked soul on here. So I would also use the leftover waste from patient medication administration. And I'm not sure if I started IV drug using before. I think it was after Lulu was born. I don't think I did it before. And I went into severe psychosis with Lulu. Drug addiction. Began my journey with antidepressants postpartum, and I had been on them previously in the past, almost needing to be admitted, and Chris standing by me through that. And so March and April of 2013 were very rough. It then escalated and got worse and worse, and I was now like heavily abusing IV drugs. Pills. My dad had knee surgery, so then there was like a plethora of drugs to use. And that just spiraled everything even more out of control. And by July of 2013, I had my first hospital psychiatric admission. They threatened to call CPS on me if I did not stop breastfeeding my daughter, which I understand now. And I was forced to stop breastfeeding Louisa, and was admitted for 7 days. They diagnosed me with bipolar 1 disorder, as well as borderline personality, anxiety, and severe depression. I started taking medications. I was only on Paxil before that. They added Wellbutrin because it was something that I had taken in the past that had worked prior to having children. And they also added Depakote, I believe. And left the hospital, was readmitted a week later for 24 hours, which they said is normal and happens because you have this routine in the hospital and you start to heal, and then you get overwhelmed by the outside life. And so I went back in went back in by force in the back of a police car. And yeah, did that. And so while I was doing that, Chris was dealing with a lot himself. He was working through drug addiction, alcoholism. That was the first time he had an affair, and there was a lot of trauma with that. But I gave him the opportunity that fall after finding out about it. After everything was done and learning about it later on, I said, I'm willing to forgive you. I'm willing to move forward. I'm willing to try again if you're willing to, but there's going to have to be some big changes that happen. And he agreed that that's what he wanted to do, that he wanted to be with his kids. And so we chose that movement and journey forward. I began the journey to go back to work because I had quit work in July and August. I went back to work in September and October, and then began the journey of travel nursing in November of 2013, and was traveling to the Bronxville, New York, which was a 4-hour journey, and I'd work the weekend and then come home. Sometimes I worked weekdays and then come home, but the girls were taken care of by my mother and another babysitter, and Chris was working night shift at a factory in Ithaca. And I did that through March of 2014. I would say about either December or January, I think maybe even January, I got pregnant with Scarlett in late November, early December of 2013. So Lulu was 9 months old. And then started using IV drugs again with Scarlett's pregnancy pretty early on. Did that through March of 2014. And because of the pregnancy, I had many complications with our other pregnancies, and I had a very thin uterus. They told me I could die if I got pregnant again. We chose to trust and have faith and find a high-risk hospital that I could work at and we could move to be near during the pregnancy. And we didn't tell any of our family because we were so mortified that we had allowed this to happen and that I was so critically crazy when I had children, and we just didn't want to hear the naysayers. So I looked for jobs around where we lived, but there wasn't anything available. And so I said, just submit us anywhere and we'll go anywhere. And Seattle called within 5 hours. I had a job in Seattle, Washington, and we moved 2 weeks later. Chris drove our truck and as many belongings as we could fit in the truck to Seattle with a U-Haul and his dad. And I met him there with 2 girls and a pregnancy. I was like 15 or 16 weeks pregnant, traveling through airports with a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. I got patted down in security to the point that they made me lift up my shirt and pull down the pregnancy band on the front of my pants in front of everybody at the Ithaca airport during that travel, which was very crazy. Hi, Shannon. I am just blabbing along. It's so good to see you if you're still here. I've been in my zone here telling the story of Christopher and my journey of life and children. There's helicopter flyovers today because it's Wednesday and they like to spend a lot of government money to fly around the monument and take pictures for the military that I don't support. Anywho, so flew from Ithaca to Seattle. I love you. You going to get the ladies? Yep. All right. Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
And, thank you, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
Chris says hi too. You might not have heard that one. So yeah, I flew to Seattle and we decided to start our life over there. I worked at University of Washington in their labor and delivery from April to January of 2015. I think they became aware of my drug addiction issues. I used clear to the end of my pregnancy and through breastfeeding my child the entire time. That's really terrible to say. However, it's proof that maybe like drugs aren't so much what causes severe developmental delay and all that stuff, that it could be related to the food, because she's very bright, very smart, very beautiful, and a wonderful kid. And it goes to show you that like having faith in the process, even like without, I had faith but I didn't, and I was very scared of the changes that were happening and what journey our life was going to take. While I was pregnant with her, I would drive an hour and a half. I had to leave my house at 5:30 to get to work at 7 because the traffic was so backed up going to Tacoma, south of Seattle. So you couldn't even get into the city on the opposite end of rush hour. And every day I would drive and I would have NSYNC Pandora on and still hear Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. And I never really knew the meaning of that until after my awakening in 2017. And I heard it on her birthday that year, and she was just blabbering on in the back seat by herself. We were going to see Lucky, I think, and she was just la 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 la, and I was like, God, she's my sunshine. Like, that's what her purpose was this whole time, was to be my sunshine. And so yeah, I knew it was going to be okay. We had pondered the idea of abortion briefly when we first found out that we were pregnant, because Chris didn't want to see me go down the same road that I'd been down so many different times, and he didn't want to see the pain associated with all of that, and he didn't want to see the hurt and all of everything. Like, he just wanted me to feel good and to feel better and to be better. And so we pondered the idea of abortion and decided against it because I couldn't kill a Lily or a Lulu. He was on board with it 100%, and we just bit the bullet and moved forward. When I was really struggling to hold together addiction and a job in Seattle, and we just decided it was too hard to stay out there with 3 kids and that we should move back to New York. And so we did, and we packed up and we moved. So it was a little over a year later. It took one of the most amazing journeys of my life, a cross-country road trip with my husband, 9-month-old child, 3-month-old Australian Shepherd puppy, and Huckleberry Brewer, who was 4 or 5 at the time, and took this cross-country journey, and we camped in the back of a U-Haul trailer and drove the truck, and the dog stayed in the truck at nighttime. My gosh, it was one of the funnest experiences of my life. We went to Yellowstone. We went and saw the top of this really cool plateau with all of these buffalo around, and it just was a magical experience. As I'm talking, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to fit in my next piece. And so what's calling out to me right here is these little triangle spots here. So I'm going to throw in little white triangles that'll mimic these guys here. And so I got to have that experience. When we moved home, I had been hooked up with a house from a previous friend from my relationship with Matt Sacco, and it was their first starter home that they were renting out, and it was a whole farm. Lucky was going to eventually come and live there with us when I could get my shit together, because I definitely couldn't. I think he was living at my parents' at the time. So then the summer of 2015, I was working up in Potsdam, New York, which was a 4-hour drive from where we lived, and drove up there, worked the same 3 in a row thing, and then came home. Was abusing IV drugs during that time. Really had some severe setbacks mentally, emotionally, and physically, and all the things because of that. Was highly addicted. Um, then, and it was pain related. It felt like pain. I went to a pain doctor at one point, but emotional pain can present itself as physical pain as well. And when you run from your pain and try and medicate it all the time, you're just running from your own problems as well. So I didn't know all that stuff then. I know what I know now. And in August of 2015, I had an affair with a person I worked with up in Potsdam. And it was almost a revenge affair. I was still angry about what had happened. I myself was already crazy. Um, all the things. And so that happened, and then our relationship was really struggling. And when I was driving to go grab something I'd left at work, because I would stay up there in this little cabin in the woods for 3 nights or 3 days while I was working, and I had to go back to the hospital to get something, and I come up and the whole road's blocked, and it's very rural there. There's only one town or one road to get into town, and the road's all blocked. And I finally get up there. I thought somebody was moving, and like they were trying to pull the tractor or the moving truck out of the driveway and needed help. It had been a motorcycle accident, and the man was laying there, and they'd called the ambulance, but they weren't there yet. And his leg was partially amputated at the knee. He no longer had a kneecap. He was in severe pain, shaking, and shock. And I was there as a previous ICU nurse, and so I provided treatment to the best of my ability at that point, and talked to him, got his name and information so that I could give that to the EMS people when they got there. But when the EMS people got there, they did not know what to do for a partial anything. They were trying to bend and maneuver the leg, and I'm just like, don't move it, just put a pillow under it, prop it to the best of your ability, get in and go. Like, I got airlifted. That's like heavy stress to have on yourself to go to an accident like that. But I plowed forward on my day and didn't really think much of it. And 10 days later, I was driving after a second trip up there. I'd already been home once, but it just was a 10-day time span of time. Was driving back home and was on Route 81, which is a big highway, 4-lane highway. I had some cars behind me, but I don't remember much out in front of me. And 20 minutes before that, I had this old little iPod, like from 2003, and all these songs on there. And the iPod was skipping, and I'd never had an issue with that iPod, ever. And it was skipping between Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel, Hello Mrs. Robinson, and Bridge Over Troubled Water. And that kept flipping through the playlist. And it was for 20 minutes, and it would play 30 to 60 seconds of one song, flip to the next one, start mid-song, flip to the other one. And those songs weren't in an order. They were random within that album of 20, 30 songs, but it just kept going to those songs. It was like a shuffle almost, which I didn't do. I would just play through the album. And then 20 minutes down the road, I said to myself, I wonder what the message is. And I wasn't even that type of spiritual connected person at that point in time, but I did ask myself, I wonder what this message is. And 20 minutes later, I look up and I watch one of those 1994 Plymouth vans with the wood side paneling that they have veer off into the median going 60 miles an hour, never slowing down, and slamming headfirst into a cement piling. And everything in my body like went. I vividly remember that, the shock and awe. I slammed on my brakes. I almost got hit by a tractor trailer, pulled the car over. The tractor trailer pulled in front of me. They pulled over. And I ran to help. And at that point, I'm trying to get the door open and telling the lady I'm there, and she's moaning, but very badly beat up. And trying to get the door open, can't get the door open. All of a sudden, the big front of the car bursts into flames. There's suddenly a lot of people there. It was also near a military base, so there were a lot of Army people that showed up. And within 5 to 10 minutes, there were 30 people. And it was the first couple of minutes that it took the car to ignite. And when it did, I kept trying to get the doors open, and they wouldn't open. And I kept begging people to help me. I remember turning around and like, somebody help me for the love of God. And finally, like, their mechanism kicked in to reach out and help. So what we're going to do here, I'm getting out my little handy dotting tools. We're going to do some dot action. So all the people help. We're trying to break the glass. We had fire extinguishers from multiple different tractor trailers trying to pull out the fire. That wasn't working, and it just got hotter and hotter, and they thought she was dead. And then I heard her moaning and saw her moaning and moving and saying, my legs, and we all of a sudden like went into full gear to get her out. There was so much smoke, there was so much craziness everywhere. And 3 guys finally were able to get the back sliding door open, climb through the burning vehicle, and drag her out. And when they dragged her out, I started CPR. The paramedics came, but they said that she was dead at that point. We're going to use a bigger tool than this. I want a bigger dot. And that was that journey. The trauma that I had from that accident, I had nightmares for months. I felt fully to blame and took on all of the guilt that I was not able to help that woman. They think that she had a massive heart attack prior to the car hitting the wall. But I held on to that for a very long time. And I was struggling terribly with that situation, yet still going to work. I believe another 10-day later period, this is August of 2015, I'm facing putting my dog Kobe to sleep at 13 years of age, and he was falling down all the time and really struggling. And so the morning that we go to put him to sleep, Scarlett hit her head is what we think happened, and went on this journey of thinking she might have ingested drugs, or we didn't know what was wrong with her. She had a neurological issue, but she was falling down all over the place, couldn't stay awake, and while Kobe was being put to sleep, she was passing out in my arms and then coming back awake. That needs a bigger dot. Nope, that one's good. I told Chris we had to get in the car and go to the hospital, and as we drove maybe 5-10 minutes down the road, we called the hospital, 911, and they said, you need to pull over, the ambulance is going to meet you. Well, when the paramedic met me, because my child was smiling and happy looking, he thought nothing was wrong and poo-pooed it as I'm just this crazy woman that's pretending my kid's sick. My kid was terrified of strangers. She would not let anyone watch her except myself or my husband, and she was attached to our hip for like 3 years. We couldn't have a babysitter. And so it was very much out of character for her to be friendly, smiley, all the things. And I was arguing with the paramedic that something was seriously wrong, and he didn't see it because he didn't know her normal behavior, but he needed to be doing more testing. He needed to put a cardiac monitor on her, and we needed to go faster than we were going. He argued with me, told me he was going to force me to get out of the ambulance. He was screaming at me at one point where I called Christopher and just had him sit there and listen to what was being told to me by this paramedic, who had only been a paramedic for a whopping like 60 days. He was still on probation. So his boss ended up intercepting us, and that kid got out, and the boss got in. And before we drove 5 minutes, he called the hospital to tell them what he was bringing with my daughter. I'm just looking for the next spot. So we're going to be putting some dot action up in here. So he called the hospital to tell them what was happening. And they said, you need to divert to Syracuse, which is an hour and a half in the complete opposite direction, because we don't have a pediatric neurosurgeon and there's neurological deficit and something's wrong, so she needs to go somewhere else. So we turn around, we drive to Syracuse. As we're driving to Syracuse, she continues to pass out. He finally gives her Narcan. It does nothing. He gives her Narcan IV. It does nothing. He placed an IV. She was not conscious for her IV. We get all the way up to Syracuse. We get into the emergency room. Nobody knows what's wrong. They drug test her for everything. Depakote, Wellbutrin, Paxil, any of the drugs that I've been on, any opioids that might have been picked up by her since I said that I had friends using, which was me. And she did test positive for weed because I was smoking at the time. But she was also breastfeeding. After all of this testing, they're like, we're going to have to take her to get an MRI and a CT scan. And we've been holding off because we don't know what's wrong with her, but we also don't want her to be exposed to that amount of radiation at such a young age unless she definitely has to be. And we're holding off, but we're going to have to take her. 5 minutes later, they come back to take her to MRI. She's back to normal, sitting up in the bed. They walk in the room. She screams at him to get out. And my kid is alive again after this whole day of passed out, not functioning. And so we then ended up being observed for another 2 hours and then drove home. Thank God nothing was wrong. We never found out what was wrong. I don't know if that all happened for me to like snap into some other spiritual place that I needed to be. But having all of those stressful situations so back to back with each other, about a week after that incident with Scarlett, I ended up having to leave work. I was the sole breadwinner of our family. My husband did not work and he stayed at home with the kids. But I could no longer go to work. I was no longer safe to be alone with my children. I was in a complete mental shutdown. I needed to be hospitalized, but there were no beds within 60-mile radius, so 120-mile diameter in all directions for a psychiatric bed for me to go. And so I moved out. That way I wasn't screaming at my children and I wasn't hurting anybody but myself. And ended up finding a psychiatrist that treated me pro bono because we couldn't afford psychiatry care. I didn't have insurance. His name is Dr. Barnard. He's up in Ithaca, New York, and that man was the beginning of my life change because he saw me not as crazy, but as a human, and that deserved kindness and love and compassion and somebody to just help them out who was really struggling. And for him, I'm forever grateful. My therapist at the time, Jody Norton, out of Ithaca, I also give huge shout outs to him because without that man listening to me blubber on for all those years, I don't think I would be here. And then Chris taking me to all those appointments. And so the psychiatrist started to change my medications. He wanted me off Depakote and he wanted me on lithium. He wanted me off Paxil. And the withdrawals of doing all of that were horrific. It fucks with your mind in ways that you can't imagine unless you experience what it's like to come off of antidepressant and anti-anxiety meds. Paxil is one of the worst with severe neurological impacts, including and not limited to zapping, electrical zapping up and down your spine anytime, day or night, for any length of time. And the farther and closer you get to the end of your dosing, the more zapping that you have. I'm sorry, but there are so many ways to heal people without electrical zapping of their body, mind, spirit, and soul. And so taking these medications, I can't believe that they're still approved and that they're okay and that we're not talking about diet and stuff like that. But anywho, that's a little off the pathway of this history lesson. And so that was like October of 2015 that I was going through all these drastic changes. somehow ended up snorting cocaine and in a music studio singing opera for backing a track with these dudes that dealt cocaine in Ithaca, and ended up with a tattoo on my arm from an apprentice. Um, just crazy living in this guy's house that was dating somebody else and was the baby daddy of a friend of mine. Um, it was just really crazy situation. And finally getting to the point like early November that I could move back home, that I was stabilizing, that I wasn't so off the wall and I was no longer using the drugs at that point in time. Um, Chris held out. He stayed with it. His parents told him to divorce me on many different occasions. Many. I was so angry that I didn't go to any Christmases that year because of what everybody was telling him he should do because of my being crazy and something that I couldn't control or help. But he stuck with me and stuck through it. In January of 2016, I was getting ready to go back to work. I was working with a travel company. Told them everything that had happened. I think it was the same travel company, maybe not. I don't remember. They were cool with it, and I had quit smoking weed in December. January comes, we get listeria from a bag of salad. My entire family got it. My daughters, me, Chris, my mom. I don't think my dad ever got it, but we'd eaten at my mom's house, and so that was that's where we got it from. I was so sick for a week, maybe even 8 or 9 days, and wasn't drinking enough, and really had a shitty diet anyways. Uh, so that when I went to take my drug test, my urine was so concentrated, and it had been well over 4 weeks since I'd stopped smoking. My urine was so concentrated that I tested positive, and I lost that travel company. I lost my contract. I lost everything. Just snap of the fingers. Nope, denied. And I could have been blacklisted, but I wasn't. And I had no idea that I was going to test positive. Like, that was the last thing in my mind going on. I was like, I finally got my life straight. I'm sober. Things are finally looking up. It's going to be good. I'm going to work at this hospital down in Westchester. I can stay at the same hotel I was staying at. Like, all of these things are going to be great. Life's going to be so much better. And then, no, you're not going to have that happen. And everything shattered, just shattered. And I remember staying in my room and being really depressed. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I just got to keep moving, try something different. Chris was devastated. What are we going to do? So I called a different company. I told him what happened, got signed on with a different company. And I said, I just need somewhere that's close to here. I need a 4-hour commute. She's like, there's nothing. I go, how is there nothing? What do you mean there's nothing? She goes, there's nothing. I said, can you search again? Like Pennsylvania. I'll get the different license. I'll do everything. Nope, there's nothing. Okay. And this is kind of a side note from that, but during that time, we're going to put a big dot right there. Probably with this tool. We'll see. We're going to test our tool before we use it. Yep. I had found a research article out of Canada about diet and mood behavioral changes within pigs on a large scale at a slaughter or at a industrial pig farm. And I was very interested in it because they said that the pigs displayed bipolar disorder behaviors when not given the supplement. But when they gave the supplement, the pigs went back to normal behaviors and were okay and peaceful little piggies. And so by changing the nutritional composition of what they were being fed, changed the behavior of the pigs. And it started making questions go off in my head. Like, I wonder if that means that we're supposed to like eat locally grown vegetables and fruits and like eat where we live, and like maybe the amount of vitamin D in the foods has something to do with it because of the amount of sunshine and all these things going off in my head about this, and making a little bit of a connection but not all the way. And so then after this little revelation or whatever, I get a phone call, and the contract travel company says, we have a place. Oh, so there's nothing on the Northeast. And I was like, you know what? Just open me up to North Carolina. I've got family there, and Florida. We could do Florida. And she messages or calls and says, hey, we've got this place in Nags Head, North Carolina. Would you be interested? And I was like, no way. Oh my God, absolutely. Chris and I wanted to move there, and we had made this plan when we first got married in 2010 and even 2009. We came to the Outer Banks from Durham area. We lived in Durham, outside of Durham, and I worked at Duke for 2 years at the beginning of my nursing career. And so we lived there and would drive 4 hours to come here and visit friends who he now works for up at Lighthouse Bagels. And we had said then, 5 years, I'd love to live here. Let's just make it a 5-year plan. Joking, never thinking anything was going to come of it. Well, guess what, guys? Out of nowhere, out of a shitstorm of life, out of complete chaos, we get offered this job at Nags Head, and within 5 or 6 hours, I was hired. And trying to see where we're going to throw some things next. Within 5 or 6 hours of that, applying for that contract, I was hired and started at the Outer Banks Hospital as a nurse in labor and delivery, which was a fun experience. My first day, I had a baby that had seizures and had to be transported to CHKD, which was an hour and a half away. And I had to give a baby Depakote, which is an ICU medication for pediatrics. Working at this rural 24-bed hospital. Oh my gosh, it was crazy. And so we moved here to the Outer Banks and lived very close to the beach when we first moved, because we moved in February, and so I was able to get housing at a beach rental off season that we were able to rent for anybody that lives here now. $1,400, including all utilities, for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,800 square foot house, 2 blocks from the beach. Today's prices aren't even close to that, as we all know now. Yeah, we started working, or I started working there. Chris stayed at home with the girls. My diet was still shit. He went to Sonic for me on a regular basis because they had Sonic here. We went to Captain George's seafood buffet millions of times. The girls loved the oysters and the clams. Lily remembers eating oysters and clams there. I think Lulu also remembers going there. And in May of 2016, we signed a lease in Southern Shores and moved out there. By July of 2016, I was lactose intolerant, and by September, suddenly lactose intolerant, violently lactose intolerant. It was really bad. By September of 2016, I said to a neighbor who was vegan, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And she was like, go vegan. And I was like, that's bullshit. It's not going to do anything for you. And she's like, no, seriously, go vegan. And I was like, what the? It's not going to change anything. And she goes, you're not looking into it the way you need to be. And I said, I'm in healthcare. They don't talk about this. And if there was a cure, they would do it. And she's like, Melanie, just start researching. So that was 2 o'clock in the morning. And by 7 a.m., September 12th, I'd eaten a goat cheeseburger the night before. I had decided my whole entire family was going vegan. I did not talk to Chris about it. And I said, if you want me here on this planet and you want me participating as the mother of your children, then I want to try something else besides all of these fucking meds that aren't going to make me feel any better, because I just felt terrible all the time. And I said, if I do it alone, it's not going to work, and I just want a chance. And after 3 days of fighting, arguing, almost divorcing, because this is a man coming from, he was the son of a butcher, a 30-year veteran butcher. He had processed his own meat and his own deer for his entire life. He fished his entire life, and I was basically telling him to give all of that up to save me. And he did. And within 34 days, I was off all of the pharmaceutical medications that the doctor at Duke that I went to see. I drove 4 hours to go see a psychiatrist at Duke Medical Center, so that I could get my psychiatric medications. Dr. Barnard wasn't going to be able to prescribe them anymore since he hadn't seen me in a year. And so I needed to have an actual psychiatrist prescribe the medication here. And so I drove there because there's not much when it comes to psychiatry on the beach. And I said, in like 2 years, I want to try and come off of my medication. And he laughed in my face, legit burst out laughing, and said, if you come off medication, you're going to be dead. And I left there going, is he right? Is that my life? Like, is this where, this is like sad. And 7 days I'd been plant-based at that point. I was off the Adderall. I couldn't take it anymore. It made me feel terrible. And I'd taken it to be able to stay awake. Like, that was the reason I was taking it. So I'm off Adderall. My family just got home, by the way. And I'm like, well, if it worked for that, how is it not going to work for everything else? And I just kept going on and had trust and faith that everything was going to happen the way it was meant to. And having that trust and faith before really knowing about trust and faith. We almost are done, guys. This is crazy. This is like blowing my mind. So within 34 days, I could no longer take medication. I tried to get back on track with a lithium after I'd forgotten to take my pills to my job up in Virginia, and ended up in like a coma-like state for 14 hours. And so I secretly quit. And when I finally told Chris, he couldn't believe it because I'd been better behaving than I'd ever been in our entire relationship in the 2 weeks before telling him. Now, bear with me. We got to pause here. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Shannon. Hello, Lily. Welcome. Say hi to the folks. Oh, she says no. Well, then you may go and continue on to your bedroom or outside, but I'll be doing this for a few more minutes. Quietly. All right, no talking. So let's see. What did you say? You're such a great storyteller. Wow, your story always amazes me and inspires me. I hope this post is a video and I come back to watch and rest. Yes, I hope so too. Thank you for being here, lady. It's crazy busy, and I wish I could do more of these. I have found that my journey in this spiritual world is partly to be a storyteller, and so that's why I share the journey and stories, because there's always tidbits of information to help folks out, We're going to add these guys as leaves as I finish up. We got a couple more kiddos, I think, coming on in here. Oh, no, I got a Christopher kiddo. Maybe we should just call it a day today, but only got a little bit more to go. Are you going outside? Okay. Oh, thanks, guys. We don't have to finish today. Got a few more minutes. Yay. So, came off all the medications 34 days later, and at that point, I started cooking a lot because there was no vegan options on the beach at all. We couldn't afford to go to a vegan restaurant, even if there were. We were so broke that year because I suddenly left my job in Norfolk after witnessing blatant racism, discrimination due to socioeconomic status on multiple different occasions. And I couldn't witness the atrocities that I was seeing happen in the medical industry. I ended up having post-traumatic stress disorder from those scenes that I watched prior to the end of my nursing career. I don't wish what happened on anybody, and if y'all want to hear the crazy stories I have to tell, we can do that on the next mandala. Just let me know in the comment section below. But yeah, we were so broke that year for Christmas that the foundation or whatever charity organization for Christmas gifts here helped supply Christmas for our family. They provided a box of food that was all vegan too. That was the crazy part. Like, they went out of their way to go shop vegan for us and provide vegan food, vegan snacks, tofurkey, all the things. And we got the welfare Christmas food box. We got the welfare Thanksgiving food box. And then the girls never had a bigger Christmas in all of our lives because I never would have gotten my kids that many gifts. um, they had gifts. I I can't describe. I mean, the whole room was filled. Clothes, shoes, anything that they needed. A giant, like, $150 package of Barbies with every Disney Barbie character that they'd ever created. Uh, just the most toys they ever received happened that Christmas. They still talk about it. They're like, remember that Christmas when we got all these gifts? It's like, yeah, it wasn't from us. um, and so I quit nursing and thought I was officially done. I did some healing. Chris started to be a roofer and worked as a roofer to bring income. We didn't have a car. I lost my car when I left the company. Suddenly you become like blacklisted from that company and they cancel your contract and everything. And so they had been paying the car payment, and so we lost the car. We almost lost the house, but we were able to finagle that with the landlord. And Chris went as a roofer and started roofing because he needed to do something, and that was all that was available. You couldn't find a job to save your life in November of 2016 on this beach. And so he went to work roofing, and I started staying home with the kids, which I had never done before. It was the hardest transition of my life. I couldn't wash dishes, guys. I didn't know how to wash dishes. I didn't know how to really cook. I knew how to clean houses because I'd done that before. But aside from that, like, I just didn't know how to be a parent. And I didn't know how to be present and, like, fully present that amount of time. I got to leave previously to that for 3 days out of the week. Like, Chris was raising our kids. And that was a huge wake-up call. I learned how to wash dishes. I learned how to be present. I learned how to be a mom. He used to have to leave work and come home because I couldn't handle it, and that happened very frequently back then. It doesn't happen maybe like once a year where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I need a break. And he'll take some time off, but he was there for me. He supported me. 2017, February, January of 2017, I decided that I was going to try nursing again. I was going to go to a town that was vegan friendly, and we were going to try and get back to making money like we used to have been making, because I made over $100,000 a year working, and 70% of it was like tax free. So, or not 70%, 70%. Only 30% of my paychecks were taxed, and so the rest of it was write-offs for housing, car, all that stuff, and it would be like $4,000 a month, plus my salary of $2,000-3,000. Good money. And so I went to Vegas. It was a vegan-friendly town. I was going to try again, see if I could do it, and maybe it would be different. And I only lasted 3 weeks. And I remember standing inside my hotel room thinking to myself, is this what I want to be doing for the rest of my life? Sacrificing the time with my family for people that do not give a shit one bit about what happens to human beings, and that it's only a paycheck. And I said no. And that was the last time I worked as a travel nurse. That was the last time I worked as a labor and delivery nurse. And off I journeyed back home, hopped a plane, and fully began my journey as stay-at-home mom. And I threw myself into it. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right, and I'm going to be the best stay-at-home mom that I can be. I'm going to keep my house clean. I'm going to keep it tidy. I'm going to take care of my kids. I'm going to do what I have to do to be the best mom that I can be. So I applied myself and did that. In 2017, we had moved to a new house at that time, had falling out with the landlord at the last house. because you know me, I can't keep my mouth shut even when people really want me to. But it took us to our next journey, and that's cool. And so we ended up on this little piece of property out in Jarvisburg, which is about 25 minutes from the beach. And the girls have room to play. I met our neighbors, Brett and Kay, and he's 11 years younger than me, so he became like this little brother and kind of Uncle Brett to the girls. We were just growing this life, and all of these shifts and all of these changes were happening, and I was addicted to social media YouTubes of all the shit going wrong in the world, and I had my eyes opened to all the shit going wrong in the world and never had really experienced that form of awakening. And I remember being on a Facebook group, and somebody said, this full moon is causing quite the shift. And I was like, shift? Full moon? What does that mean? And they said, you need to look into this. And they just sent me to one YouTube channel. And that was the moment that, like, the third eye just exploded open and was like, I've been doing it all wrong all this time. And the awakening fully started in full force. I unlocked so many things about myself, and I just recognized what the journey was about, and then had to like reflect on all the crazy stuff that I'd done. I wrote all these letters to my family for forgiveness, even though like crazy shit had gone on between us. I was just ready to forgive and let go. And during this process of awakening, and it takes a long time, Chris wasn't there. He wasn't ready to be in that state of awakening. And I was forcing it because I wanted him in my life. I wanted to spend that time with him. And I wanted him to see like I could see. Yet we all know now that people are only going to awaken when people are ready to awaken. And you can't force that to happen prior to the time that they're ready. And as I shifted higher, he stayed his vibration, or even shifted lower at some points, to the point that there was a lot of negative vibrational energy between the two of us. I would bring things up about what I was seeing or hearing or learning about, and he would blow me off and act like it was just a big joke and I was some silly person. I'd bring up topics to discuss and the same thing, and he just wanted to watch movies, and I wanted to learn about life and talk, and it was just not working anymore. In October of 2017, I found Mandalas, and it was a year to the day after quitting all the bipolar medication. It was October 16th, 2017. And Chris was working as a bartender. He didn't get home till 2, 3 in the morning sometimes. I would clean the house every night and be done cleaning because my kids would be in bed by 7:30, 8 o'clock every night. And I'd be done cleaning by 10. And then like to wait up for him, make sure he got home okay and all that. And I just was really bored and sick of watching TV. And I said, you know, what can I do with my time? And the voice popped in and said, how to draw a mandala. And I was like, okay. And so I did that, and I looked up a YouTube video, how to draw a mandala, one night. And it looked like a kindergartner drew it, and I drew it with a pencil because I wanted to be able to erase. But I drew something, and I created something, and it unlocked, like I felt like I was meant to do it my entire life. So the next day I drew another one, and the next day I drew another one, and within a week, Chris brought me a surfboard, and I did a surfboard, and I spent 16 hours back, like 2 days in a row on that surfboard. And he was frustrated that I didn't want to spend his days off with him. I wanted to be mandalaing, and it became this addiction because I felt really good and happy in this place of mandala, where with him I felt like I had to be somebody else. And so as I mandalaed more, he and I drifted apart emotionally. And I mean, we were there still. He lost his wedding ring, the solar eclipse of 2017 that we witnessed as he and the girls swam in the ocean. And that was symbolic of what was to come. But in May of 2018, I was going through really dark, twisty times. And I wrote in my journal what would happen if we divorced. And I wrote the pros and the cons and all the things that would come about it. And then went about my life. And in July of 2018, he was in New York with the girls, and I met somebody. And that person was a catalyst to awaken parts of me that had been sleeping for a long time. And it made me realize that I did not want to be in a relationship with Christopher at that time, and that we both had a lot of growing to do before we were going to be able to truly make it work. And I decided that I wanted out. And so we separated. It was heartbreaking. It was very hard for him, and he became very angry. We went through really difficult, chaotic, painful trauma that we did to each other through that process, even more trauma than we created when we were together. He ended up moving out into an apartment. I stayed at the house with the girls. Then there was issues of like not being able to get a job and him not wanting to give us money to survive still because he was single and living his best life. And one thing came to another, and on October 15th, 2018, Hurricane Michael came through the Outer Banks, ripped it to shreds, and I moved to Durham. I remember standing out there watching the waves crash up where I had watched the sunset every night, and it was like 20 feet up the shoreline that the waves were crashing at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I just remember thinking, you know, the winds of change are here, and they're taking you away. And they sure did. And so the girls and I moved to Durham to move in with my sister and her husband and her family. And I had to go back to work because you can't just be a freeloader. I got a flu shot, which was I was so against, but I was unable to get any job without having a flu vaccine. And so I got vaccinated, and I became a hospice nurse because I thought maybe I could tolerate hospice where people are already passing away and I just have to be there to help them through the process. Well, it was very difficult to watch people be fed Coca-Cola and suffer from colon cancer and know that we were providing the same thing that was killing them already. Anywho, we separated officially. He came out every weekend, took care of the kids. I went to work, and that was our life. Went through some crazy trauma and wounding with my sister and her family, violated privacy, all that stuff, and had a huge falling out. I have not talked to that part of the family since. The girls and I ended up homeless, and I wasn't even abusing drugs at the time. They thought I was because I was drawing mandalas and spending my time doing this. Maybe never really knowing how long the process took, or just thinking maybe who would ever want to spend that much of their life doing this. But I was just very quiet in my room, or I would go for walks in the woods and sit down and draw, and they assumed I was using drugs, so they were tossing my room all the time looking for drugs, reading my journals, reading my diaries. And finally I blew a gasket, and that ended that relationship swiftly, to the point that we were not allowed to get any of the girls' stuff out of the home. They had the clothes on their backs, their backpacks, their lunch boxes, and that was all that they had. I had nothing, and I had to go use my paycheck to buy us clothes. I met a woman at an AA meeting the night before, and she offered us her home. And so we moved in with this woman named Sadia, also a life-changing human being. My girls slept on her couches, and I slept in her guest bedroom with one of the children every night. And I went to AA meetings regularly. That was part of our agreement, that I had to be in AA. I had to be working the steps and taking care of the kids. And I did that. And we realized, Chris and I did, when he had to install a sink in this little basement apartment. She had been washing her dishes in her bathroom sink, which wasn't even like a deep bowl basin one. It was like the shallow bathroom sink. And I'm in there with like this huge electric pan trying to wash dishes. So he installed a kitchen for her. Um, did some work around the yard for her when he would come and stay with the girls while I was working. At this point, we were amicable to each other, and decided that it was just going to be easier. He was starting a job at Lighthouse Bagels, so he was going not be able to come home on the weekends to care for them, and I was going to have to move back to the beach, and that was what we did. And so for March, I lived in a hotel, the Days Inn and Suites with the girls for almost the entire month. We found a house, and when we went to move in, Chris had unpacked the storage unit, and I went to move in with the girls, and it was going to be my house with the girls, and he was going to live in another house with some friends on the beach. And we showed up, and it was infested with cockroaches to the point that they were skittering down all the walls. And it was that moment where, like, no, you're not going to do this. You think like everything's working out. You think everything's going to happen the way that you want it to. And then all of a sudden, this huge shift happens. And I had to go and like really bully this lady into giving me my money back and guilt trip her into it. I was like, would you allow your grandchild to stay in a place that's infested with cockroaches like this? And I showed her video and everything. I scolded her. Because I shouldn't have to, that's like slum landlord, and not cool. And so I got my money back and stayed in the hotel, or no, we moved in with Chris in his 1-bedroom apartment. That's what happened. And hoped and prayed that something else was out there. And we got a phone call back. They'd raised the rent a little bit, but we could do it. And we didn't think we'd be able to afford it. And everywhere we ended up going and moving to, we never thought we'd be able to afford it. But the universe always provides, and you're always meant to be where you're meant to be. And so we moved into this house together, and we were just co-parenting. We had separate bedrooms and had no intention of getting back with each other. We were just gonna parent together, make it easier for the girls, and split the costs of the rent and utilities. And so every weekend I would go to Raleigh, work my weekend away. We were having a sitter come in, paying a sitter $300 a weekend to come sit with the girls. And that wasn't enough or enticing enough for anybody. And so there were multiple weekends I had to call out because we couldn't find a sitter or they canceled. And so I decided, like, I'm not going to be able to work anymore. This isn't working. And we decided to pull me out of work, and I was just going to invest my time and energy into making the art business work and growing my art business. And I started watching children that summer to help supplement costs and all that. And I had said, just give me 30 days to try and make the amount of money that I was bringing home after all of the cost of going to work. Like, I had to have some place to stay. I had to pay for my food while I was there, all of the things. And so it ended up being that I was bringing home $800 a month. And within 30 days, I made that. Via childcare. It wasn't artwork, but it was childcare, and it gave me the opportunity to do the work for artwork that I wanted to do. By July, I had lots of fellows knocking on my door, and lots of fellows kind of that I was very mildly dating, going out for a drink, or not drinking, but like going out to meet them somewhere. And I think Chris noticed that, and he stepped up. And when the girls were visiting grandparents in New York, I was down babysitting here, and he was working. We had some alone time, and we started spending time together again, and went on our first date a year to the day after separating from each other, and decided, this was where we wanted to be, and we wanted to give our family a second try. And I'm really glad we did. So that was July of 2019. We decided to try to make this work for our kids and ourselves. And in that journey, it has not been easy. there has been a lot of growth that's happened. There's been a lot of compromise that's happened. There's been a lot of figuring it out as we go along. There's been a lot of breaking hearts still, and there's been a lot of trauma. But you know what? In the end, life's not easy. Life's very hard. Relationships are very hard. Compromise is very hard, especially when you don't want to compromise. Being in a relationship with somebody and sharing your life to that degree, especially after, like, I had freedom when we weren't together. I had the ability to like dump the kids and be like, see you later, I'm out of here, and go and have this like complete separate sense of self and just not have that responsibility, and at the time not have the desire to be home for those days and to fully immerse myself in work. However, the reward of coming back around and making it work and seeing the life that I had always wanted as a child happening for my children is one of the greatest gifts that I could have been given. And overcoming all of the challenges that are associated and wrapped around separation, divorce, all of that stuff, seeing the fruits of the labor, I guess, that we put in to make that happen has been a very rewarding process. And so after all of these years, these 15 years with this man in my life and the journeys that we've taken, we are starting a new chapter in our life that I'm not quite ready to reveal yet, and I will very soon, but huge new chapter. And it's all made possible by taking a second chance with a person that I wrote off. I was like, I will never get back together with him. Ever. Never, ever. Real dramatic. And I'd say it to everybody. But we know what happens when we say never, never say never. So, like, if you say never, it's going to happen. I said a year before drawing mandalas, I will never be able to draw a mandala. It's too hard. They're too beautiful to work with, blah, blah, blah. As I sit and paint with you all on a live video chat. I always said I will never do a live video. Look at me now. So you never know where your life's going to turn out. When you're down, you're down. When you're up, you're up. It's all one big old roller coaster ride of awesomeness. And the roller coaster is what really makes it fun, I guess, and gives you some variety. Because if it was the same thing every day, it'd be really boring. So sometimes we need the emotions, we need the crazy, we need the pain, we need the suffering, we need all of that to show us the good that we have sitting right in front of our face. La 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 la. We are almost, like, I think I made it back around. It was crazy. We've been going for almost 2 hours. Holy cannoli, and it feels like 5 minutes. It's nuts how you get wrapped into it, and it's nuts how much patience and time that it takes. But I wouldn't be here without this process either, because these mandalas have healed my soul in ways I could never have imagined. When I first started drawing them, I didn't draw them for healing. I was like, oh, it'd be cool to draw a mandala. And these have probably brought me some of the most healing, along with nature, that I didn't even know I was capable of experiencing. So we're going to finish up this last petal, and then we're going to call it quits for today. And I want to say thank you to everybody tuning in and watching. I want to say thank you to Shannon for being here and leaving all those beautiful comments. If you're just stumbling across this channel for the first time, I've decided to do these live videos once a week, and topic is usually to be determined. I don't usually have a topic, and I don't usually plan a discussion like this. I kind of talk about the energies that have been swirling around for a couple of days and go into detail with that. However, this was a request, so I hope this satisfied what you were looking for, Mr. Vince. Thank you for the question. That's how we met. That's our love story. And it is a story full of love and hope and faith and divine guidance and learning that you're exactly where you're meant to be when you're meant to be there, and to find the gratitude for that, because without that you have nothing. And so, with all that said, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I think I just said that, but we're going to say it again. I really enjoy this time with you guys. I get really excited about it. I don't get excited about that much stuff, but I'm excited to come do this with you guys. And so I want to thank you all for being here. I think this bad boy might be completed, and we're going to have to write something on the back of it when it's dry. I don't know if I should stick something in here though. And this space feels awfully open. So I guess I can look at it from that perspective. It's sometimes easier if you hold it out in front of you to like see what might be needed. I'm looking at it now and I think it's done. I think we're there. So cool. This has been such a fun journey. I think it was a total of probably 10 hours, 10 and a half hours since I did 9 mandalas and 9 mandala live videos, and this is the 2-hour finale. Excuse me. Oh, wow. But so beautiful. So fun. I'm going to put this up for auction, maybe. Auction for Lucky. We are manifesting a farm for my horse, and have had him for 20 years. He's getting ready to turn 22. So we'll do an auction for Lucky, the Lucky Bunny farm. I'm going to clean up all of the edges in here, and go over everything like you saw me do around the edges here. And then she'll be ready. I hope you all have an awesome day. Thank you all so much for being here. It's been such a pleasure to work with you guys on this and to engage and tell all the stories. If you're interested in hearing some different parts of my life, please leave a comment in the description box below and ask your questions. Love answering questions, love answering the comments, and I'll post this so that it's available anytime for viewing. I figured out how to do that 3 weeks into this process, so that you all can catch up with it when you're ready. So again, thank you all so much for being here. So much peace and so much love and so much namaste to you guys. The soul within me recognizes the soul within you. Hasta luego, my friends. Adios.